Welcome to Oslo, Norway, and the world-famous Thor Heyerdahl Kon Tiki Museum. Today we're going to take a tour of this place and relive a book I read 50 years ago and never imagined that I'd get to see it in person. This is a museum dedicated to one man's unstoppable dedication to proving a theory possible and the adventure of sailing a balsa wood raft 4,300 miles across the Pacific Ocean. From the Oslo ferry terminal, you catch a shuttle for a 20-minute ride to what I'll call Museum Island. It's really a peninsula, but there you can see the Kon Tiki Museum, the Fram Museum for Polar Exploration, the Viking Museum, and the Norwegian Folk Museum. The Kon Tiki Museum is a couple-minute walk from the dock, and just look for the replica Easter Island statue. Then enter the best museum in Oslo. If you're not familiar with the Kon Tiki story, I recommend heading to your right and going to a screening area where they run a short video on Thor Heyerdahl's expeditions. If you have the time, I recommend heading to the cinema downstairs to the left of the lobby and watching the hour-long Academy Award-winning documentary Kon Tiki. If you can't wait, then walk right up and come face-to-face with Kon Tiki. Let's just enjoy viewing this magnificent handmade vessel recreating a balsa log and bamboo craft used prior to and during the Inca Empire in South America nearly 1,000 years ago. We'll tell the story as we go along. But let's enjoy taking a quick look at it now. In 1947, Thor Hierdahl and 5 other men built and sailed the Kon Tiki from Peru to Polynesia in 101 days. He did this to test his theory that it was possible for Polynesia to have been settled, or at least in contact with, people from the Americas prior to the European discovery by riding the Humboldt Current across the Pacific. His theory was ridiculed by all serious academics and naval experts at the time, so he put his life on the line to prove it was possible. The Kon Tiki is 46 feet long, 18 feet wide. Over the 3 months, it averaged 2 miles per hour in just the wind and prevailing current. Heyerdahl is a biologist by training, and while in Polynesia in the 1930s, he developed a theory that peoples of Asia could have rode the Pacific currents to North America, migrated south, and eventually turned westward again and sailed from South America to Polynesia. While in Polynesia, the elders told him that their ancestors came over the seas from where the sun rose. He also noticed similarities between the stone statues he saw there and the ones he had heard about in South America. Additionally, the Polynesian origin story has a founder named Tiki, while South American stories tell of Kon Tiki, a pre-Inca chief who lived in Peru, who, when defeated by the Incas, sailed his raft to the west, never to be seen again. Armed with archaeological, linguistic, oral tradition, and biological evidence, he wrote a thesis describing his theory of American Polynesian cultural exchange. Unfortunately, it was rejected by the establishment, who were convinced that Polynesia was settled from Asia. One of many major tasks was gathering a large balsa logs. Because Heyerdahl wanted to depart before the hurricane season, he arrived in South America during its rainy season. To gather logs, he had to fly to the top of the Andes and then work his way down to the balsa area. From there, with the help of native loggers, he harvested 9 large balsa trees and floated them down rivers to the ocean. This map shows the actual route Kon Tiki took following the prevailing winds and currents from Peru to Polynesia. Now that he had the logs, he needed a place to build his raft. Using incredible connections and persistence, he met with the Peruvian president, who eagerly agreed to provide support, if it meant that showing that Peruvians had a hand in settling Polynesia. So the logs were moved to a Peruvian naval base and the Kon Tiki was built. Here's a list of the team members. Despite many predictions of their failure and death, the crew, along with a parrot, set off on April 28, 1947. No one alive knew how to sail such a raft, so they learned as they went. One thing they learned was that rather than the logs cutting through the ropes cut into the logs and allowed the logs to move freely with the waves without fear of breakage. If you go downstairs below the Kon Tiki, they have a wonderful view from below the raft, including a rare whale shark, which visited them for several hours one day. Any modern-day ocean fisherman knows that mahi-mahi will be found wherever there is floating debris in the ocean. They mistook the raft as debris, and for nearly the whole voyage, the crew had all the fresh fish they could eat. In late July, they saw their first land-based birds. On July 30th, they saw the first Polynesian island, but despite their best efforts, they couldn't get Kon Tiki to land. A few days later, they came to Roroa Atoll, surrounded by a coral reef, and on August 7th, without any further option, they hit the reef, and Kon Tiki and all crew members survived. They unpacked the critical gear, moved to a protected uninhabited island, now called Kon Tiki Island. After a week, the French sent a boat from Tahiti and brought the crew and Kon Tiki back to the world, where they were largely received a hero's welcome. But the academic community largely dismissed the trip and merely argued that if there was contact between Polynesia and South America, then it was because the Polynesians once again sailed against the wind and current and went to South America instead of the other way around. As you continue into the rest of the museum, you'll see other displays that deal with his time as an archaeologist. He led one of the first archaeological expeditions to Easter Island, and you can see some of the findings that he has throughout the exhibit. I do want to say that this is an outstanding museum. They have everything right there in Norwegian and then a same size English version. So this museum caters very much to English speakers. One of the cool things was they recreated a couple of caves that are on Easter Island. Now, I don't know how faithfully these are recreated. I don't think they are similar to the Lascaux caves in France, but they are fun to walk through. The lighting is pretty special. These are some artifacts that were found in a cave on a ledge, just like they're found here. Notice the one on the right? That sure looks like a boat, doesn't it? And I think we're going to see the real thing here in a little bit. That was a recreation. They have cave drawings there. Hopefully they are faithfully represented as they were found. I trust that they are. Lots of chambers you can walk through, especially fun for the kids. Now this is going to take you back to an area where they have housed many of the relics that he did bring back from Polynesia. As well, I believe, as some of the relics that they had in South America. And there's the boat I was talking about. Very interesting. In this area, we are looking at some statues that he recovered from Easter Island. And then across the way is going to be some similar looking statues that he recovered from Polynesia. And that is all part of his thinking that they had similar origins, or at least by the same people. They recreated the office that he established once he moved to Italy. The second half of the museum is dedicated to his other expeditions, including a major one on a vessel called Ra. This was a reed boat trying to recreate the potential for folks from Europe or Africa to use a reed boat to cross over to the Americas, as technology was several thousand years ago. He had native boat builders attempt to put it together, and they were able to go about 2,000 miles, but then it developed a fatal flaw in the design by the builders. And he also started seeing quite a bit of oil pollution there from oil tankers that were cleaning their tanks in the Atlantic. And because of that, he became a lifelong environmentalist. About 2/3 of the way to America, the Raw broke apart. And again, that was due to design. It hadn't been done in a while, and the boat builders at the time just did it wrong. But that didn't stop him. He built Raw 2, as you see here. This boat was built by Reed Boat Builders in Lake Titicaca in South America, and it was built in Africa for the voyage over. And this time, it was properly designed and properly built. It must be quite the adventure sailing from Africa to America on nothing but an ancient technology reed boat. But that's exactly what they did in 1970. They used the trade winds and the known currents and sailed from Morocco, and after 57 days and 3,800 miles, they arrived in Barbados, proving the possibility of navigation from Africa to the Americas several thousand years ago. It doesn't prove that it happened. It's quite different going somewhere that you know exists versus some place that you have no idea what's over there, but it proved that it is possible. And that seems to be what he dedicated his life to. Well, we're going to end our tour of the museum right there. Fascinating museum. It's a big recommendation from me for anybody who gets over there. And while you're on the island, you can visit the other ones, which I'll discuss briefly in another video. Here's a last look at Kon Tiki, where it all began. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of that. Hope it's useful. And as always, I am enjoying retirement. Take care.